What's going on, family? It's your boy, TC, Theron Michael Cunningham, the Hope Dealer. Man, coming to hit you with a hit of hope, man, hoping to push you to pursue your purposes, your passions, and the platforms that I believe God has uniquely birthed you into this earth to fulfill. Yo, man, this hit of hope, man, is coming from a recent trip, man, to my hometown, Muhlenberg County, the Central City, Kentucky. And man, I remember, man, sitting in a place called Gish Park. I've been talking recently about Gish Park, man, because Gish Park, I believe, has produced some of the greatest athletes, man, that Kentucky has ever seen. But today he's not talking about Gish Park and basketball. Today, man, is talking about, man, a young brother, man, that was I would call, man, what many of us would call a hood mentor. Man, he was a mentor, but he didn't know it. He just survived and lived in the hood, man. But how he lived many times, man, some of the things of his life, man, just mentored and pushed us, man, to a different place. You know, I'm gonna tell you to you like this, man, and some people might be surprised to hear me say what I'm getting ready to say, but man, it was a brother named Smutty G. I love the nickname. I always loved the nickname Smutty G. Man, Smutty G, man, one day, man, was sitting in Gish Park, sitting on one of the wooden logs, and he had a bucket to one side, a knife in his hand, and another bucket on the other side. In the one bucket, man, he had a bucket full of fish. Man, it was filled to the rim with fish. The brother had been out doing his thing, man, fishing. And on this other bucket, man, was going to be where he cleaned the fish, and this is where he's going to put the clean fish. I remember watching Smutty, man, that day, man, with that knife, man, so finely, man, scraping all the gills and all the stuff, man, off of the fish, man, and then he sliced it and cleaned it and filleted it. Yo, I don't know how to say it correctly because I ain't never did it myself, but I watched him, man, that day, man, with precision, man, fillet those fish, man, and throw them into that clean bucket. And man, as I'm sitting there, man, riding through the parking lot of Gish Park that day on this recent trip, I see that same log. And I imagine that Smutty and I, man, was sitting there together. And as he was talking, just talking life, man, and watching him clean those fish, it reminded me of the scripture, man, when Jesus told Peter, it's going to be on your faith in me that I'm going to build my church. And he says to Pete, man, and the gates of hell will not be able to prevail against it. Now, here's what I want to say to you with this hit of hope today, is that the people that were standing around with Jesus and Peter, hearing Jesus say that he's going to build his church on the faith of Peter, many of them would have been shocked because they're saying that, listen, Jesus, if you're going to build the church, man, on anybody, are you sure you want to build it on Peter? Man, because understand it, man, Pete was not a businessman per se. Pete was not into politics. Pete possibly wasn't the most articulate of the disciples. Peter was what many would say was simply a fisherman. And man, when Jesus was looking at Peter, he not only saw what he saw in front of him, but he saw what Peter could be. And y'all got to understand that the amazing thing that we get a hit of hope from this conversation is that when Jesus was talking to Peter that day, he did not see Peter. He was not talking to Peter, the pastor. He was not talking to Peter, the writer of the epistles, man, in the New Testament. He was not talking to Peter, who had preached to the 3,000. He was talking to Peter, who was probably closer to being the fisherman that he met when he called him to follow him, rather than all of these other glorious things that Peter would go on to accomplish. I wonder, man, who I'm speaking to today, who's listening to this hit of hope, that you may be who Jesus ran into right now, talking about Peter. Peter probably was closer to having scales under his nails. Peter was probably still muddy at the feet. Peter possibly could be closer to somebody who smelled like the work that he did and smelled like where Jesus found him. I wonder, man, if I'm speaking to somebody, man, you might be what Jesus called Peter, called him out of the dirtiness of where he was existing. But Jesus did not call him just to get clean, but he called him to do a work that only Peter could do. The magnificent piece of that moment, y'all, is that there was no one else in that circle that Jesus was talking to that had the faith to now proclaim who Jesus was and to say who Jesus was to them in a fashion that would call Jesus to respond and say, Pete, I'm going to build on you what I'm not going to build on anyone else. You, Peter, are going to be the example that others are going to read about years to come, and they're going to be encouraged because they're going to see who I'm willing to use. Listen, this Hit of Hope, man, is now specifically for those, man, who understands about the rigor and the toughness of life. You understand about existing in dirty, dark moments. You understand what it means to come away from the situations of life where you still got scales under your nails and you're wondering if God has use for you in his kingdom. Listen to me. You might be the smutty G, sitting on a log somewhere cleaning fish, getting your hands dirty. Just sitting there, man, living life, getting your hands dirty. And you're wondering, man, if God can do anything with you. Let me tell you, there is proof that God can do mighty things with folk that will humble even the dirty hands, that will humble even the dirty mouths, that will humble their actions and be willing to follow Christ into their present and into their future, leaving behind a past that many would look down on. But when Jesus sees you, he doesn't see you solely from where you came from. He sees all that he is willing to do through you. Who is it? Is it you? Are you willing to offer all that you are, even though you got some dirt, even though you got some stank on your life? Are you willing to offer it up to the one who's able to clean you up? And listen what he told Peter. He said, Peter, old fisherman, I'm going to make you a fisher of men. I'm going to change your life. And you're going to do more for me than you ever could have imagined. It's your boy, TC, Theron Michael Cunningham, the Hope Dealer.